Just because Peter Parker's Aunt May is getting on a bit doesn't mean she's boring. In fact, there's much more to May than just a mean batch of wheat cakes. From her humble beginnings to her big screen debut and everything in between, here's the untold story of Marvel's most iconic golden oldie. Officially, May and Ben Parker made their canonical debut alongside Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy number 15. But Spider-Man's origin story wasn't the first time that the characters had graced the pages of a Marvel comic. A couple of months before Spider-Man's big entrance, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko published a short story called Goodbye to Linda Brown in Strange Tales number 97, which featured early versions of both of Peter's relatives. Goodbye to Linda Brown is only a few pages long and doesn't leave much room for character development. But both Ben and May show glimmers of their future selves. For one, they look very similar to their Amazing Fantasy counterparts, especially May. For some reason, the colorist decided to give Ben a gray mustache, although Ditko clearly didn't pencil one in. In addition, both characters spend most of their time fretting over a teenager with secret superpowers, which is pretty much all Aunt May did for the first 50 issues or so of The Amazing Spider-Man. Luckily, things did get a little more interesting after that. Most fans probably saw Aunt May in the flesh for the first time in Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man movie, in which Peter Parker's doddering aunt was played by Emmy-winning actress Rosemary Harris. But Harris wasn't actually the first person to bring May to life in a live-action project. That honor goes to Jeff Donnell, and so we're clear, Jean Marie Donnell went by her nickname Jeff, so that explains that. Anyway, she portrayed Aunt May in a 90-minute TV movie that served as the backdoor pilot for the 1977 Spider-Man television series. Donnell only played Aunt May in the Spider-Man pilot. For May's later appearances, the role was assumed by a number of different actresses, including reoccurring Dennis the Menace star Irene Tedrow. And of course, many actresses tackled the role of Aunt May in the world of animation before Harris immortalized her on the big screen. June Foray voiced May in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, in which Spidey and Company operated out of May's Queens-based abode. But you probably know Foray better as the original voices of both Rocky the Flying Squirrel and his arch-nemesis Natasha Futal. In terms of early Spider-Man stories, you won't find much that's more iconic than The Amazing Spider-Man number 33. This comic, titled The Final Chapter, isn't actually co-creator Steve Ditko's final pass at Spider-Man, but it does feel like an end of an era, and it puts Aunt May front and center of the story. As the issue opens, Aunt May lies on a hospital bed, dying from a transfusion of Peter Parker's radioactive blood. The only cure is an isotope known as ISO-36, which is contained in an underwater lab controlled by Spider-Man's arch-nemesis Dr. Octopus. The two fight and destroy the lab, and as it fills with water, Spider-Man is pinned underneath multiple tons of fallen steel, with no hope of escape. The following 4 pages are arguably Ditko's finest work in any Spider-Man comic. At least, that's what Stan Lee thinks. Lee later said, "It was one of my all-time favorite stories. It was such a thrill, even to me, and I was the writer of the story. When I saw that, I almost shouted in triumph. Steve did a wonderful job." And who does Peter have to thank for his big moment? Well, Ditko, of course, but also Aunt May. As the water rises, Spider-Man thinks about his beloved aunt and how he's failed her in the past, namely by letting an anonymous robber get away, leaving him free to kill her husband, Ben. Using May's strength and resilience as motivation, Peter lifts the steel beams above his head and escapes. He delivers the isotope to the hospital in the nick of time and, with May cured, puts the specter of Uncle Ben's death behind him once and for all. The scene is so iconic that it plays out on the big screen too, in Spider-Man Homecoming. The Amazing Spider-Man number 121, in which the Green Goblin kills Peter Parker's girlfriend Gwen Stacy, is arguably one of the most important and notorious superhero comics ever published, but it almost played out very, very differently. Originally, Gwen Stacy was going to make it to the end of the issue alive and well, while Aunt May was to meet her demise at the Goblin's hands instead. That revelation comes from none other than longtime Spider-Man artist John Romita Sr., who co-plotted the issue with writer Jerry Conway. While talking to CBR, Romita confessed that he, and not Conway or artist Gil Kane, was Gwen Stacy's real murderer. The original plan was to sacrifice Aunt May to the Green Goblin, but Romita pushed back on the idea, claiming that it would actually make The Amazing Spider-Man less dramatic. Romita explained, "It'll lose one of Peter Parker's hang-ups. He won't have to worry about Aunt May anymore. He won't be treated like a child anymore. If we want to make any kind of stir in the monthly line, we have to kill somebody important." And so, Romita explained, the victim had to be one of the story's leading female figures. From there, Gwen Stacy became the obvious choice. At the time, Mary Jane was what Romita called an airhead comedy character, but Gwen Stacy was the love of Peter Parker's life. In order to wring the maximum amount of emotional turmoil out of the story, Gwen had to go. And the rest, of course, is history. Aunt May's abilities aren't limited to simply fretting about the well-being of superheroes, though. In fact, she's also a superhero herself. Sort of. In What If number 23, a backup feature called What If Aunt May, instead of her nephew Peter, had been bitten by that radioactive spider, tells the story of, well, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? In Amazing Fantasy number 15, Peter attends a scientific demonstration where he crosses paths with the fateful radioactive spider. In What If number 23, he leaves his bagged lunch at home, and Aunt May rushes to the Science Institute to deliver it. While she's there, the spider bites May on the hand, and her spider powers kick in on the walk home. May quickly sews herself a costume and creates a unique version of Spider-Man's web fluid out of some over-yeasted dough. Before long, she's taken to the streets as Spider-Ma'am, juggling her crime-fighting career with her familial responsibilities. And while What If stories aren't canonical, writer Christos Gage and artist Dave Williams made Spider-Man a reality in Spider-Man Team-Up number 3, part of Dan Slott and Olivier Coipel's dimension-hopping epic Spider-Verse. In the comic, a team of Spider-Men, including the Peter Parker we know and love, travel to Earth 3123 to rescue Spider-Man from Karn, an interdimensional hunter with a mad hatred for everything spider-related. The team is successful, but the battle leads to a dramatic development in Spider-Man's story. She finally reveals her secret identity to her husband and nephew, whose lives are changed forever. The list of people who have stopped Galactus, Marvel Comics' gargantuan devourer of worlds, is pretty short. The Fantastic Four have done it, of course. So have Thanos, the Silver Surfer, and the Beyonder. And Aunt May. Wait, what? This tale took place in Marvel Team-Up number 137, which was part of Marvel's Assistant Editors Month, an event during which some of Marvel's top creators were given free rein to tell the wildest and silliest stories they could imagine. In the comic, Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four head off to San Diego to thwart an unnamed disaster, leaving Reed Richards and Sue Storm's superpowered son Franklin in Aunt May's care. Unfortunately, just after the real heroes leave town, Galactus arrives in search of a new herald, and he's got his sights set on Franklin. One ill-aimed energy blast later, and Aunt May is transformed into the Golden Oldie, a glowing superheroine infused with the power cosmic.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength.
Thanks to Galactus, all of Aunt May's health problems, her arthritis, her vitamin deficiencies, her bingo addiction, are gone. But there's a catch. Galactus is hungry, and it's up to his herald to keep him fed. At Franklin's prompting, May feeds Galactus a Twinkie. He loves it and demands more. Using her newfound powers, May scours first Earth, then the entire galaxy for more of the spongy, cream-filled snack cakes. On her travels, she meets an alien that looks suspiciously like the Pillsbury Doughboy, who just happens to make planets that resemble Hostess products. At May's suggestion, Galactus takes the alien on as his new herald and frees May from her responsibilities. When she returns home, Franklin absorbs all of May's cosmic powers, and everything goes back to normal, right before writer Michael Carlin reveals that the whole adventure was just a bad dream. Or was it? Peter Parker will always be the main man in May Parker's life, but with such a busy day-to-day life, May's nephew doesn't always have time for his beleaguered aunt. Thankfully, despite her age, May is incredibly popular with the fellas, and has accumulated quite a collection of dudes to keep her company while Peter's away. There was Ben Parker, of course, who met his tragic demise in Amazing Fantasy number 15. But before Ben and May got hitched, she almost married a criminal named Johnny Jerome, who tried to win her heart with money and who returned to plague her in the Spectacular Spider-Man Annual number 4. In The Amazing Spider-Man number 54, Dr. Octopus rents May's spare room and wins her over with his charms. And in The Amazing Spider-Man number 131, he actually tries to marry her in order to steal her inheritance, although Hammerhead and Spider-Man interrupt the wedding before it becomes official.
Cute place. Real homey.
Oh great, it's Liv.
Throughout the 80s, May dated Nathan Lubensky, a reformed gambling addict who asked May to marry him before he relapsed, fell afoul of the Vulture, and died in Amazing Spider-Man number 336. In the early 90s, she enjoyed a brief fling with the Fantastic Four's longtime mailman Willie Lumpkin. After Peter Parker and Aunt May moved to Stark Tower in the build-up to Civil War, May and Tony Stark's butler, Jarvis, shared a mutual attraction. Finally, May dated and married J. Jonah Jameson's father, John Jameson Sr., and stayed with him until he died of a rare hereditary disease in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 4, number 19. Aunt May actress Rosemary Harris was 75 in 2002 when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man hit theaters. When she appeared as May in The Amazing Spider-Man, Sally Field was 66. By contrast, Marissa Tomei, who plays May in the modern MCU, was only 50 when she first starred as Peter Parker's favorite aunt. That's significantly younger than May is usually portrayed. In Civil War, Tony Stark even jokes about it.
Who else knows? Anybody?
Nobody.
Not even your unusually attractive aunt?
But don't blame Tomei. While appearing on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Tomei revealed that she actually petitioned Marvel to make May into a senior citizen, just like in the comics, but the studio declined.
I actually made a case to go with to age me up, but no, they didn't do it.
Besides, as Civil War co-writer Stephen McFeely has explained, a younger Aunt May makes perfect sense, given that Tom Holland's Peter Parker is still in high school. McFeely told the Los Angeles Times that's partly why his aunt isn't 80 years old. If she's the sister of his dead mother, why does she have to be 2 generations ahead? In other words, the MCU's Aunt May isn't too young at all. In the comics, she's actually way too old. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.